Mic check.
This video's purpose is to enlighten the viewer, which is you, on the effects of poverty and inequality through the eyes of different individuals from different nations. In order for you to be aware of the issues that are so prominent in today's society, our project aim is to spread awareness to these issues through these interviews that remain the same throughout the video to prevent bias and give different cultural views which are presented through all the different opinions given. And in the end, that you may be aware of these issues and the possible solutions to them. Please enjoy. What do you think poverty is caused by?
I believe that poverty is caused by the hierarchy of employers being paid a lot more than their working class employees. I believe that the employees should be paid equally, or not equally, but closely to their employers.
Caused by corruption, different financial status, and inequality.
The history that Russia had before with communism, that affected like a lot of people's income and caused a lot of people to go homeless.
Poverty is linked with many negative conditions such as substandard housing, homelessness, not getting the proper nutrition and foods, not having access to healthcare, and not having the proper childhood and not being raised properly, and having a subpar education, say.
So I think there's a high number of birth rates and parents cannot afford to pay for high education for all their children. And therefore, because not everyone can get the same amount of education and can get that kind of high level of education, not everyone can be qualified for jobs that can be high paying. And because of the education system, because obviously someone needs to have a lot of money in the beginning to kind of be able to get into a good school and then be able to qualify for a good degree and then get a good job. And not everyone can afford that. And then they cannot get good jobs that can pay them a good amount of salary.
Why do you think certain groups are more into poverty than others?
I believe that certain groups are more poverty than others because some nations have more natural resources than others, thus providing more jobs for the working class employees. And some other countries have a lot more resources than other countries, which can provide many jobs for the working class, which offers a very great experience for the employees and will make them a lot of money in the future.
Due to government issues like corruption, as people can bribe the government to avoid being punished for the criminal activities.
Inequality with racism, that can affect their income. Usually minorities are paid less than Europeans and whites.
Relating it from where I'm from, which is Bulgaria, there aren't really many groups. So one I can think of off the top of my head is gypsies. So compared to the general population, gypsies have a subpar education, subpar housing. They're looked down on and they're racially profiled, as in they don't really have an origin, and they're just treated differently compared to the general population.
What is your opinion on poverty and inequality, and how badly does it affect us in today's society?
I mean, this answer is pretty obvious. Poverty and inequality is a very negative thing, no matter how you look at it. It affects us in many different ways in our society, in education or in our workplaces, and it's just something that brings us down as a society.
I definitely think that in some areas of the world there is still kind of racial discrimination, and there's also an inequality in like social class. And also I think stereotypes play a really big part because some people, when they want to get a job, due to the employers, they might have a specific stereotype on this type of thing. And even though they may be qualified, this person may have the idea that, oh, this person does not have the qualifications needed, even if they do. And because they tend to stereotype people, they will not kind of allow them to have the job or something. And that's what I think.
What is your opinion on poverty and inequality, and how badly does it affect us in today's society?
Poverty negatively affects us all the time, and it's an effect that we've been accustomed to by our media. Poverty is something that we should be focusing on tackling, as some people are struggling in many third world countries to provide for their families and are unable to make ends meet and feed their families.
In my opinion today, poverty is also caused by inequality, as people aren't paid enough, causing them to go into poverty due to having problems on their financial status, struggling to buy their necessities to survive in the modern world.
Poverty affects a lot of people, and it's very hard on their lives. People struggle financially and they can't pay their bills, and then they get evicted, and it just breaks family bonds and relationships.
So it definitely affects, like, for example, the economic growth of the country. So due to poverty and this inequality, there will not be much difference in, for example, GDP and economic growth. And also this can create a lot of rage between people, and this rage of not feeling like you don't have enough can also lead to more crime. Like, for example, in my country, in certain areas there's very high crime rates. I'm from Iran, and some areas in Iran there's very high crime rates, and compared to, for example, living in Dubai, some areas may not be as safe to carry your belongings, and you have to really make sure that everything you have is kind of like hidden in your purse and you don't have your bag like unzipped or something. And a lot of people try to go against the government for this. That's why in Iran, even these days, a lot of riots happen because of this inequality in terms of economy, and a lot of people who gets, like, for example, they lose their jobs for very silly reasons, and because their employers are not able to pay them because of the poverty that's existent in Iran.
Do you think these issues are a major problem, and why?
I believe that these issues are a very major problem in today's society, as everyone should have an equal chance at providing food and a place to stay, and that some people shouldn't be treated a lot more unequally than others.
These are major issues, as 2020 has gone through many challenges. Riots due to inequality and people losing their jobs due to COVID-19, forcing everyone to go into poverty.
But these issues are indeed a very major problem, as let's say inequality between the two sexes, male and female. Research says, and people have stated, that females get paid less than males in the workplace, but that's debatable. There's also racially profiling in work. So let's say a person of African origin is treated worse and gets paid less than someone from let's say a Caucasian origin from Europe or from America.
A major problem, because even if it's just happening in one country, because of how countries tend to have relations with one another, it's kind of become a global problem. And I think that it's kind of just like when it starts in one country, it can kind of start affecting other countries that specific country has a relation with. And also because there's a lot of, for example, multinational businesses. If this is happening in a specific business, it can kind of cause a downfall in all the other businesses, and this might lead to a recession.
Do you think inequality is a major reason for poverty, and why?
I believe that inequality is a major reason for others, because statistically speaking, many nations' employees are working class, and other nations' employees are all higher paid than others, which is very unfair. And some people, based on their nationality off the bat, have a bigger disadvantage at getting work than another nationality.
Yes, because people are being treated unequally, they usually get a lower pay, which affects their financial situation.
Yes, I think so, because it's kind of because not everyone gets the same opportunity. A lot of people, when they're kind of being employed for a good job, they may have money from before, which shows that there's an inequality in like different social classes. So it's kind of unfair when an employer sees that and they're like, okay, you have a lot of money, and then they get employed for a very high paying job. And this shows that there is inequality, because if someone has less money, even if they have the education for doing well in that job, they may not be accepted because the person will reject them because of their social class. For example, if they come from a working class, or if they come from a specific country. So it shows that there is discrimination when it comes to their social class and their ethnicity.
Why do you think some parts of the world have higher poverty rates?
I believe that geography comes into play in this, because some nations have a lot more natural resources and a lot more fertile soil, which can help them provide for their nation jobs and can help the working class work and get paid a very good amount. While on the other hand, some nations have very bad natural resources, which can cause them to not have a lot of resources, which really decreases the jobs for the working class and the pay for the working class.
due to the government status that they're not supporting their people and small businesses.
Because of the history in Russia and its history with the Soviet Union and communism, a lot of people still today struggle financially because of the effects that communism had on the country.
Some parts of the world have higher poverty rates because of maybe government reasons. So the government isn't treating their general population properly because they don't have the enough funding to provide welfare, healthcare, education to the general population. Another reason can also be geographic. So how some countries like the UAE, where we live, had an economic boom, all because of natural resources like oil. So countries that aren't in that position can't experience that large growth, and which can leave it in poverty.
Because of like obviously I know it sounds like I'm saying, oh, they have poverty because they don't have enough, they don't have much opportunities to kind of improve their education, and because of that they cannot kind of travel or go anywhere else to do something about their poverty rates.
Do you think this is linked to inequality? And why do you think this is?
I believe that this is not linked to inequality, and it's just based on geography and the land and how it's formed.
No, I don't think this is related to inequality, as people there have no access on getting opportunities due to the government not assisting them.
Yes, because a lot of the southern side of Russia were paid less, which affected their financial situation, whereas the northern side were paid higher and were usually in the upper class.
I think it's partly related to inequality, but also not, because sometimes the issue, when there's poverty in a country, the issue is like the country's government itself. For example, in Iran, the country's government itself is very corrupt, and it's not really, so the poverty that's there is not really because of inequality, it's just because they understand it as a problem, but they don't really try to fix it. So this lies under the country's government and kind of legal system, and it doesn't really have to do anything with inequality.
I would say it is linked to inequality in some places of the world, partly. In some places of the world, yes. As in, referring back to some previous questions, people of like ethnic descent, let's say from Africa or from South America, they get treated differently compared to like the general wider population if you were in America, let's say. So they would experience inequality, and some would possibly also be below the poverty line. So that's why it could be linked to inequality.
Do you think culture could be enforcing inequality through instilling certain ideologies and beliefs into people?
Demographically speaking, some people are off the bat set to hate another nation based on political issues in this year. And I believe that some people hire based on what they feel. As an example, an Egyptian employer would not employ someone who is either Jewish or Israeli based on political problems and issues, which causes a very certain unfairness in employment.
No, because in most parts of my country, my culture doesn't interfere with any relation to inequality.
Yes, with racism and the people of Russia, who especially were older, they would still have their prejudiced views on the other races, which enforces inequality to the other minorities in the country.
In my country, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but nothing is really enforced onto like children in schools and stuff. But you know, the general sociological belief that the father is the head of the family, the mother is always the caretaker, and you know, children have to go to school, and you know, the general teachings.
No, I don't think so. I don't think culture has anything to do with inequality, because I think inequality kind of roots from deeper issues in the culture, and plus like every place has a different culture, so you can't really say that like inequality is caused by any ideology that a specific culture like reinforced.
Do you think that other aspects such as religion could be linked to causing inequality, and why?
Some religions have a lot more holidays than others, which could drive an employer away from hiring such an employee, and some employers do not generally and have a hatred to other employees based on their cultural beliefs, because of their cultural beliefs clashing to each other. such as Jewish people and Muslims. Their cultures clash with each other, hence causing political issues between them.
Yes, as in some religion, it has been said that men are much more superior than women.
I don't think religion can cause inequality because I think religion wants equality for everyone.
In my country, I would say no, because 99% of the population practices Christianity, and so I wouldn't say religion causes inequality in my country. But in many other parts of the world, there's a lot of people with like clashing religions. People are always, even though the religion isn't against any others, the people that practice them go against each other.
I agree, because some religions are kind of looked down upon, and therefore there's inequality because they don't get the kind of same treatment as everyone else. Like for example, I mean, many religions are looked down upon. There's Jewish people, and there's also Muslims, which like in other countries they get discriminated so much and they get hated that they don't get the same opportunities as their, for example, Christian friends. Especially, I mean, it depends on the country, because if like you see like most European countries are mainly Christians, and therefore, like for example, France is very discriminatory against Muslims. So it really depends on the country and the population and how much of them are Christians or how much of them are Muslims or Jewish people or Hindus but basically I feel like whatever the majority is, they get discriminated least, and whatever is a tiny minority, they get discriminated the most.
Lastly, what do you think would be your solutions on solving the issues of poverty and inequality?
I believe that causing and providing equal pay for other working class members would provide a better chance for these members of the working class society to be able to provide for their families and have enough money to sustain a regular life and be able to live over the line of poverty. Thank you.
Treating all minorities equally and paying them equally, and understanding each other better.
I would ask the government to change their laws like Dubai, as though it is a Muslim country, they're very diverse and give a lot of citizen opportunities, which decrease poverty and inequality issues.
Okay. This one's easy. There's a lot of different ways. It's just that there needs to be initiative taken by the world, not just by individual countries. The UN should make it a must for governments to support people below the poverty line and ensure that most of the population is not under the poverty line. Should make it a goal to keep striving forward, provide welfare for even the lowest part of the economy in the population wise. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
I personally think that a huge issue lies upon the country's kind of the government and the people who are leading the country. And I feel like a lot of the time, I mean, sometimes they don't really have the best of intentions, and there's sometimes problems that may be solved by making a few changes here and there, but a lot of the people who are leading these countries may be kind of selfish and they don't really focus on the welfare and needs of everyone. So I think there is an issue with like kind of politicians and kind of government relations.
In conclusion, through the views and opinions presented, the prominence of poverty and inequality are consistent amongst different nations, with different nations having different yet similar reasons as why poverty and inequality persists. Some opinions suggest that it is influenced by beliefs and ideologies, while some do not. Regardless of the perspective, it indeed is true that poverty and inequality persist through numerous cultures due to different beliefs, ethnicity, socioeconomic hierarchy, religion, and many more. Hence, we should find ourselves to do our part to raise awareness to the negative effects of poverty and inequality, and share and find possible solutions to fight it, to make society and our world a better place. Thank you for watching. Peace.